The black SUV screeched to a halt. Three masked men dragged Victoria Montgomery from the back seat, pressing a gun to her temple. 12 million or she dies, one growled. Nobody noticed the janitor nearby. Nobody ever did. Until his mop clattered to the floor and in 3 fluid movements, the kidnappers lay unconscious. Victoria stared at this nobody who moved like a predator. When a forgotten hero saves a powerful CEO, 2 broken souls discover that true strength lies in vulnerability, not power. This is their story. Ethan Riley was a man deliberately designed to be overlooked. Broad-shouldered, with calloused hands and tired eyes that missed nothing, he wore his faded janitor's uniform like camouflage. At 38, the lines around his eyes spoke of burdens heavier than the cleaning supplies he pushed through Montgomery Tech's gleaming hallways. Each night, he checked the locks twice, scanned the street before entering their apartment, habits from another life. 8 years in Delta Force had left him with nightmares he carefully hid from Sophie, his 7-year-old daughter. After losing his wife Rebecca to cancer 3 years ago, he had abandoned his military career for the invisibility of minimum wage work, his sole focus creating stability for Sophie, even if it meant being overlooked by everyone else. Victoria Montgomery existed in stark contrast. At 35, she commanded Montgomery Tech Innovations with impeccable precision, her copper hair always perfectly arranged, designer suits armor against a world she kept at calculated distance. Orphaned at 12, she had built her cybersecurity empire through relentless determination and brilliant strategy. Behind closed doors, she worked 18-hour days, her penthouse apartment pristinely empty of personal touches. The business press called her the Ice Queen of Silicon Valley. At night, she stared at the city lights below, feeling nothing but the hollow victory of success without connection. The kidnapping attempt was merely the latest thread in a life where trust equaled vulnerability, and vulnerability equaled weakness. Friday evening at Montgomery Tech headquarters, Victoria worked late, reviewing acquisition documents when her security chief, Marcus, interrupted. "We've received another threat, Ms. Montgomery." More specific this time. She dismissed it with a wave. "Increase security if you must, but I'm not canceling the Singapore meeting." Her voice carried the certainty of someone who had never been proven wrong. The office emptied as night fell, leaving Victoria alone with spreadsheets and strategy documents. Her assistant had left dinner untouched, as usual. Outside her window, the city sparkled, oblivious to the woman who helped shape its technological landscape. She checked her watch. Nearly midnight. Time to head home to an empty penthouse. The executive parking garage was deserted except for her driver, waiting patiently by the black sedan. Victoria's heels echoed against concrete as she approached, mind already on tomorrow's meetings. She barely noticed when the lights flickered overhead, dismissing it as routine maintenance. "Good evening, Ms. Montgomery," her driver said, opening the rear door. As Victoria slid into the back seat, she registered something wrong, a scent that shouldn't be there. Before she could react, a cloth pressed against her face. She struggled, fingernails scraping leather, but darkness quickly claimed her consciousness. She awakened disoriented, still in the garage but now surrounded by 3 masked figures. Her driver stood outside the vehicle, phone to his ear, face pale with terror. "Your company has 10 hours to transfer 12 million to this account," the leader told her driver through the car's window. "Or your boss won't survive the night." Victoria's mind cleared rapidly, assessing the situation with the same analytical precision she applied to business decisions. 3 men. Armed, professional, not common criminals. They knew her schedule, had neutralized her security. Her chances of survival diminishing by the second. Ethan, mopping nearby, recognized the tactical positioning of the kidnappers immediately. Military training, possibly private contractors. His mind calculated angles, distances, threat levels, an automatic assessment honed through years of covert operations. Sophie's face flashed in his mind. He had promised her pancakes tomorrow. Getting involved meant exposure, questions, his carefully constructed anonymity shattered. For 3 years he had worked to become invisible, to bury Captain Ethan Riley beneath the janitor's uniform. His daughter needed stability, not a father who attracted danger. Yet something in Victoria Montgomery's composed face, even with a gun to her head, sparked recognition. The same steel he'd once seen in teammates who refused to break under pressure. The leader grew agitated, pressing the gun harder against Victoria's temple. Perhaps we need to show them we're serious. Decision made, Ethan flicked the lights with the maintenance panel, creating momentary darkness. He moved with precision, a sweeping kick, an elbow strike, a wrist lock. The first kidnapper dropped unconscious, the sound of his fall masked by confusion. The second reached for his weapon, but found his arm twisted behind his back, tendons straining near breaking point. The third, the leader, spun to fire, but Ethan was already there, disarming him with a technique taught only to elite operatives. Victoria watched, stunned, as the janitor she'd passed 100 times without noticing subdued 3 armed men in seconds. His movements weren't frantic. They were methodical, almost elegant, professional. When the emergency lights activated, illuminating the scene, she found herself staring into eyes that had transformed, no longer downcast and forgettable, but sharp and assessing, scanning for additional threats even as he secured the final attacker. When the building security finally responded, alerted by the driver's panic button, they found 3 restrained kidnappers, a shaken CEO, and a janitor calmly returning to his mop. "Who are you?" Victoria asked, studying his face as if seeing it for the first time. "Just the janitor, ma'am," Ethan replied, eyes downcast once more, already regretting his decision to intervene. He resumed cleaning, the transformation so complete it almost made Victoria doubt what she'd witnessed. "No," she said, voice steady despite her ordeal. "You're not." He met her gaze finally. "With all due respect, Miss Montgomery, it's better for both of us if I am." As police swarmed the scene, Victoria watched Ethan slip away, determination settling in her eyes. She didn't build an empire by accepting mysteries. She would find out who just saved her life and why he was hiding behind a janitor's cart. The next morning, Victoria sat in her office, security footage playing on her screen. She watched Ethan's movements frame by frame, the precision, the economy of motion. Nothing wasted, nothing flashy, just deadly efficiency. "Military," she murmured. Her security chief Marcus nodded, standing uncomfortably at her shoulder. "Not just military, special operations most likely. Those takedown techniques aren't taught to regular soldiers." "And we had him cleaning toilets," Victoria said, more to herself than to Marcus. "How did we miss this?" "Background checks for custodial staff aren't exactly rigorous," Marcus admitted. "Basic criminal screening, employment verification." Victoria tapped her fingers against the desk, considering. "No one that skilled disappears into a minimum wage job without reason. Find me everything." "This is..." Her assistant entered with a file. "Ethan James Riley, employed by Build Care Janitorial Services for the past 3 years. Before that, nothing." "Nobody is nothing, Claire. Dig deeper," Victoria said, her eyes never leaving the screen where Ethan moved with lethal grace. "I've tried," Claire replied. "His records are surprisingly sparse, almost deliberately so. Use my government contacts, Department of Defense. Someone there will know something." By afternoon, Victoria had fragments. Honorable discharge, sealed military records, a deceased wife named Rebecca. A child. The pieces didn't form a complete picture, but enough to know the janitor who saved her was hiding something significant. She visited the Department of Defense, leveraging connections that had helped secure Montgomery Tech's government contracts. An old general finally revealed what her investigators couldn't find. Riley was one of our best. Delta Force, specialized in hostage extraction. Led the Jensen Embassy rescue in 2018, saved 34 civilians without firing a shot. Strategic genius. The Pentagon wanted to fast-track him to top-level operations. "Then what happened?" Victoria asked. The general's face softened. His wife got sick. Aggressive cancer. He requested transfer to stateside duty to be with her. After she died, he resigned his commission. Disappeared completely. Some thought he might go private sector. Security firms would pay millions for his expertise. But he just vanished. Until he turned up as a janitor in my building, Victoria mused. A man with his training could have any security job in the country. If he's cleaning floors, Ms. Montgomery, he has his reasons. That evening, Victoria waited beside Ethan's battered pickup in the employee parking lot. He emerged, instantly alert when he spotted her. His posture shifted subtly, defensive, assessing. Old habits. He's Montgomery. Mr. Riley, or should I say Captain Riley. His face revealed nothing, but a muscle tightened in his jaw. I'm just a janitor now. A janitor who saved my life using Delta Force training. Silence stretched between them, neither willing to break first. Finally, he asked, "What do you want?" "To offer you a job. Head of personal security. The salary is substantial." Not interested. He moved to step around her. Victoria, unused to rejection, blocked his path. "You have skills people would pay millions for. Why waste them mopping floors?" Ethan's composed mask slipped slightly, revealing a flash of something raw beneath. "Those skills came with costs I'm not willing to pay anymore. I have a daughter who needs stability, not a father who disappears on classified missions or makes powerful enemies. It could change your life, your daughter's life." "My life doesn't need changing, Ms. Montgomery. I'm exactly where I need to be." "Hiding? Wasting your potential?" Something flashed in his eyes, the first real emotion she'd seen. "There's nothing wasted about keeping my promises to my daughter. Now, if you'll excuse me, Sophie's waiting." Victoria watched him drive away, both irritated and intrigued by his refusal. In her world, everyone had a price. Ambitious executives, politicians, rivals, all eventually yielded to the right incentive. What would it take to change Ethan Riley's mind? The next day, she received a security assessment on her desk. Unauthorized, detailed, highlighting 12 critical vulnerabilities in her company's protection protocols. From building access points to executive travel patterns, each weakness was meticulously documented with suggested countermeasures. The unsigned note simply read, "Fix these. Consider it my professional courtesy." Victoria studied the assessment, recognizing its brilliance. This wasn't just experience. This was genius-level strategic thinking. She made a call. "Find me everything about Ethan Riley's daughter, school, schedule, everything." Her assistant hesitated. "Are you sure that's—" "I don't pay you to question me, Claire." Later, reviewing the information, Victoria learned Sophie attended Westbrook Elementary. Recent teacher notes mentioned the girl struggles with a science project, a solar system model giving her particular difficulty. Victoria smiled slightly. She now had her approach, not through the father's ambition, but through his daughter's needs. She also discovered they lived in Oak Ridge Apartments, a complex scheduled for demolition to make way for luxury condos. The development company, Montgomery Holdings, her separate real estate venture. Victoria stared at this information, an unfamiliar feeling stirring. These people weren't abstract obstacles. This child would lose her home because of a decision Victoria had signed off on without a second thought. Her usual ruthless pragmatism seemed suddenly hollow. For the first time in years, Victoria Montgomery felt something crack in her carefully constructed armor. Saturday morning, Sophie Riley sat on their apartment's small balcony, struggling with her science project, a solar system model that kept collapsing. Ethan tried to help, but engineering was never his strength. His expertise lay in assessing threats, not balancing plastic planets. "Why won't Jupiter stay put?" Sophie asked, frustration evident as the large plastic sphere tumbled from its wire again. "Maybe Jupiter's just being rebellious today," Ethan suggested, earning a smile from his daughter. A knock at the door interrupted them. Ethan tensed, old instincts surfacing. Through the peephole, Victoria Montgomery, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse, almost unrecognizable from her corporate persona. Her copper hair fell loose around her shoulders, making her appear younger, less formidable. "How did you find where I live?" he demanded through the crack in the door, chain still engaged. "I'm a CEO, Mr. Riley. Information is my business." Her confident tone belied the uncertainty in her eyes. "What do you want?" Victoria shifted uncomfortably. "I heard your daughter is working on a science project. I have an engineering background." Ethan stared, suspicious. Before he could respond, Sophie appeared beside him, curiosity overcoming shyness. "Is she here to help with my planets?" Sophie asked, peering around her father. "Mine keep falling off." Victoria knelt to Sophie's level, surprising Ethan with the graceful movement. "I built a similar project when I was your age. If your dad agrees, I could show you some tricks." Something in her voice, a genuine warmth absent in their previous interaction, made Ethan hesitate. Sophie looked up with hopeful eyes, her expression an echo of Rebecca's when she wanted something. "Fine," he relented, "but I'm watching you." The cramped apartment startled Victoria, though she hid her reaction well. Water stains marred the ceiling, mismatched furniture crowded the small living space, but also bookshelves overflowing with children's literature, arranged by reading level. A wall covered with Sophie's artwork, each piece carefully framed in colorful construction paper. A photo of Ethan, Sophie, and a smiling woman with Sophie's eyes. Rebecca, Victoria presumed, displayed prominently, despite its worn frame. For 3 hours, Victoria helped Sophie construct her solar system. She explained gravitational fields in terms the child understood. Her usual corporate precision transformed into patient guidance. Sophie absorbed everything, asking insightful questions that made Victoria smile genuinely. "You need to calculate the weight distribution," Victoria explained, helping Sophie adjust the wire hanger structure. "Think of it like a balance scale. If Jupiter is heavier on this side, what do we need on the opposite side?" "Saturn and its rings," Sophie exclaimed, understanding dawning. Ethan observed silently, making lunch. He noticed Victoria's eyes lingering on their modest meal preparations, the careful rationing that came with tight budgets. He recognized her awareness, not pity, but genuine observation. She was cataloging details, understanding their life through its small signals. "Why do you live in a big building all alone?" Sophie asked suddenly, the question emerging with a child's innocent directness. Victoria froze. "How do you know I live alone?" "Dad says people's eyes tell stories. Yours look like my dad's did after Mom went to heaven." Ethan intervened. "Sophie, that's personal." But Victoria answered softly, "I work a lot. It doesn't leave time for much else." "That sounds lonely," Sophie said with a child's brutal honesty. "Sophie," Ethan warned, but Victoria shook her head. "It's all right." To Sophie she added, "Sometimes it is lonely, but I have my company. It's like a different kind of family." "Do they make you birthday cakes?" Sophie pressed. "Not exactly." "Then it's not really like family," Sophie concluded with absolute certainty. Later, as Victoria prepared to leave, the completed solar system spinning perfectly balanced in the afternoon light, Ethan walked her to her car. A modest sedan, not the luxury vehicle he expected. "You didn't have to do this," he said, gesturing back toward the apartment. "I wanted to." Victoria paused. "Your daughter is remarkable." "She is." "You know this building is scheduled for demolition." Ethan's face hardened. "Yes. 3 months. To find somewhere else we can afford." "The company behind it." "Montgomery Holdings. I know who's displacing 30 families for luxury condos." His voice remained even, but accusation lingered beneath. Victoria flinched. "I came to tell you I've halted the project. The building will be renovated instead. Current residents can stay." Ethan studied her, searching for deception. "Why?" "Business decision. Renovation has better tax advantages." She didn't meet his eyes. "Thank you," he said simply, offering neither effusive gratitude nor lingering resentment. As Victoria drove away, she called her office. "Cancel my dinner with the Japanese investors and find out which schools in the Oak Ridge area need science program funding." That night, in her penthouse, Victoria stood at her window. For the first time, she saw not just buildings and assets, but homes with people like Sophie and Ethan. She opened her laptop, searching Delta Force hostage negotiation techniques. If she wanted to understand Ethan Riley, she needed to understand the world that shaped him. Meanwhile, Ethan tucked Sophie into bed, their nightly ritual unchanged despite the unexpected visitor who had transformed their day. "I like your friend," Sophie murmured sleepily, clutching the stuffed rabbit that had survived 3 moves and countless washings. "She's not my friend, honey. She's my boss's boss's boss." He looks at you like mommy did in the videos, like you're her favorite person to find. Ethan kissed her forehead, dismissing the observation as a child's imagination. But later, he found himself pulling out Victoria's business card, turning it over in his hands, wondering about the woman beneath the CEO facade who spent her Saturday helping a stranger's child. Monday morning, Ethan found a note with his cleaning supplies. Security office, 10 a.m. VM. He debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. In the security office, Victoria waited with Marcus, her head of security. Tension radiated between them. As Eve hesitated, tension radiated between them. "We have a situation," she explained without preamble. "A former employee threatening the Singapore contract signing. I've fired Marcus." Marcus protested. "Mim Montgomery, with all due respect, you missed 3 infiltration attempts last month. Mr. Riley spotted them all." She handed Ethan a tablet showing security footage with timestamps. "You've been conducting your own security sweeps during your shifts." Ethan returned the tablet, unsurprised she'd discovered his nighttime rounds. Force of habit. "I'm offering you a consulting position. 2 weeks. Review our security for the Singapore signing. Your regular job will be covered, payment in advance." She slid an envelope across the table. Ethan opened it, eyes widening at the check. This could cover Sophie's education fund. "That's the idea." He studied her. "Why me?" "Because you see things others miss. And because you have more reason than anyone else to keep me alive." "What does that mean?" Victoria's eyes flicked meaningfully toward the envelope. "I've added a lease agreement. Your apartment building's renovation includes a designated manager position. Free housing, modest salary." For the first time, Ethan smiled slightly. "Bribery, Ms. Montgomery?" "Investment, Mr. Riley." Over the next 2 weeks, they worked closely. Ethan overhauled security protocols, identifying vulnerabilities with an intuition that impressed even Victoria. They spent long evenings planning, their professional relationship gradually warming. Victoria learned Ethan spoke 4 languages, played chess at master level, and had an encyclopedic knowledge of military history. Ethan discovered Victoria taught herself coding at 13, climbed mountains on rare vacations, and anonymously funded several children's hospitals. "You don't publicize your philanthropy," he observed one evening as they reviewed surveillance footage. "Publicity creates expectations. Expectations create limitations," she replied. "I prefer freedom." "Is that why you live alone? Freedom?" Victoria paused the video. "I live alone because relationships require vulnerability. Vulnerability creates weakness. I wasn't built for weakness." "Neither was I," Ethan said quietly, "until Sophie." When Sophie fell ill with strep throat, Victoria arrived at their apartment with specialized medication from her private doctor and sat with the child while Ethan showered and rested. "Why are you helping us?" he asked later as they shared coffee on the balcony, Sophie finally sleeping peacefully after her fever broke. Victoria considered carefully. "For most of my life, relationships have been transactional. People want funding, connections, favors. You're the first person in years who refused what I offered." She paused. "It made me curious." "About what?" "What it would be like to help someone who expects nothing in return." Days later, the Singapore delegation arrived. Victoria and Ethan moved through the high-security event, communicating seamlessly through earpieces. When Victoria expertly diffused a tense negotiation moment using a conflict resolution technique Ethan had taught her, he felt an unexpected pride. "That's the 3rd concession they've made," Victoria murmured as they stepped aside between sessions. "Your suggestion about creating artificial time pressure worked perfectly." "You executed it flawlessly," Ethan acknowledged. "You'd have made a good negotiator in the field." "High-level business isn't so different from hostage situations," she replied. "Just fewer guns, usually." That evening, Victoria invited Ethan and Sophie to celebrate the successful signing at her penthouse. Sophie explored in wonder while Victoria showed Ethan her rare book collection. "First editions," he noted, impressed, carefully handling a leather-bound volume. "My one indulgence, books were my escape as a child." "From what?" Victoria's fingers traced the spine of a nearby book. foster homes, group facilities. After my parents died, I became a ward of the state. Books provided consistency when everything else changed. Ethan's hand brushed hers, reaching for the same volume. Neither pulled away immediately. The moment stretched between them, waited with unspoken understanding. The connection broke when Sophie called from the kitchen. They found her attempting to make dinner, a mess of ingredients everywhere, flour dusting her cheeks, pasta scattered across the counter. "I wanted to make something special," Sophie explained, distress evident in her voice. "Dad said you probably never have home-cooked meals." Victoria stared at the chaos and, to Ethan's surprise, laughed genuinely. "I haven't cooked since college. My last attempt set off the fire alarm in 3 dormitories." Together, the 3 of them prepared a simple pasta dinner. Victoria, who negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, followed Sophie's earnest instructions on the proper way to stir sauce. Later, Sophie fell asleep on Victoria's expensive couch. Ethan and Victoria stepped onto her balcony. The city spread beneath them like a carpet of stars. "The security consultation is officially over," she said. "Yeah. I'd like to offer you a permanent position." Ethan shook his head. "I told you I don't want back into that world." "Not security, special projects director. Problem-solving, strategy, working directly with me, regular hours, no danger." He studied the city lights. "Why?" Victoria faced him. "Because in 2 weeks, you've spotted weaknesses in my company no one else saw in years. Because you challenge me when everyone else agrees automatically." She hesitated. "And because when you and Sophie leave tonight, this place will feel emptier than it ever has." Ethan considered her words, the woman behind them. "I'll think about it." As they prepared to leave, Sophie hugged Victoria tightly. "Can we come back soon? I've never been so high up before." Victoria looked to Ethan, vulnerability clear in her expression. "That's up to your father." The elevator doors closed on Victoria's solitary figure. In the lobby, Ethan stopped suddenly. "Wait here with the security guard," he told Sophie. "I forgot something." He returned to the penthouse. Victoria opened the door, surprised. "I'll take the job," he said simply. "But I have conditions." Her smile was genuine, relieved. "Name them." "Sophie comes first. Always. No late nights unless absolutely necessary. No travel without adequate notice." "Done." "And we keep our personal relationships separate from work." Victoria's expression flickered. "Is there a personal relationship, Mr. Riley?" "There could be," he admitted. "That's why we need boundaries." She nodded. "Anything else?" "Yes, your driver picks up Sophie from school on days I can't. I don't trust the school bus system." Victoria smiled. "Already arranged." 3 months later, Victoria addressed her executive board, Ethan beside her as special projects director. Their professional partnership had transformed Montgomery Tech. Employee satisfaction up, innovative solutions flourishing under Ethan's unorthodox approaches. The stock price reflected their success, rising 20% since his appointment. This winter, UH got death threats and F-bombs from both reporters in person, and after the meeting, Victoria returned to her office to find an email waiting. Photographs of her, Ethan, and Sophie at the park, at Sophie's school, outside their apartment. The attached message: "Powerful people shouldn't have such obvious weaknesses." "Julian Werner," Victoria explained when Ethan saw the images. "Former business partner I testified against for fraud. Released from prison last month." "We need to increase security," Ethan insisted, already mentally cataloging vulnerabilities in their daily routines. "No, I won't let Sophie's life be disrupted. The Singapore contract renewal is tomorrow. The biggest deal of my career. Werner's just trying to rattle me." "Victoria." "That's my decision, Ethan." Her tone brooked no argument. The signing ceremony proceeded under heightened but discreet security. Victoria dazzled the Singapore executives with her perfect recall of their families, preferences, and previous discussions. Ethan remained vigilant in the background, watching for threats. Midway through, he noticed a caterer he didn't recognize. The man's stance, the calculated scanning of exits, the slightly too formal posture. Warning signals flared in Ethan's mind. Simultaneously, his phone vibrated, a text from Sophie's teacher. "Your daughter wasn't picked up. Is everything okay?" Cold terror washed through him. He signaled Victoria urgently, showing her the message. "Go," she said immediately, cutting off a conversation with the lead negotiator. "I'll finish here." At Sophie's school, the teacher explained. A woman showed Sophie's photo, said she was from your office, Mr. Riley, had authorization codes for emergency pickup. Ethan's phone rang. Werner's voice. "Your daughter is safe, Riley, for now. Tell Montgomery to transfer $20 million to this account or she never sees the child again." Victoria arrived minutes later, already mobilizing her company resources. "We'll pay," she said without hesitation. Vanessa Dan. "No." Ethan's voice was deadly calm. "Once we pay, we lose leverage. Sophie becomes disposable. We can't risk her life. Trust me, Victoria. I've handled 37 hostage situations. Never lost one." His eyes locked with hers. "But I need you to follow my lead completely." For a woman accustomed to control, it was the ultimate test of trust. Finally, she nodded. Ethan made contact with Werner, his Delta Force training evident in every calculated word. He established rapport, created false time pressure, extracted critical information about Sophie's location through subtle psychological techniques. Victoria watched him transform, no longer the quiet janitor or thoughtful strategist, but a precision instrument focused on one objective. She made calls at his direction, leveraging her resources exactly as instructed, despite her instinct to take charge. When Ethan identified an abandoned warehouse as the likely location, Victoria insisted on accompanying him despite his objections. "She's your daughter," Victoria said fiercely, "but she matters to me too." At the warehouse, Ethan outlined a distraction strategy. Victoria overrode him. "I'm going in as the primary target. Werner wants me, not Sophie." "Absolutely not. This isn't a discussion. You taught me leaders make hard decisions." Her voice softened. "Let me do this, Ethan. For Sophie. For you." Before he could respond, Victoria stepped into the open, calling Werner's name. As predicted, Werner emerged, gun trained on her. "The mighty Victoria Montgomery?" he sneered. "Come to save some janitor's brat?" Victoria stood her ground. "I transferred $10 million. You'll get the rest when Sophie's safe." Werner laughed. "You're not in control anymore, Victoria." "Neither are you," she replied calmly. "The building is surrounded, but I'm offering you a way out. The money, a private jet, disappearance protocols my company developed for high-risk witnesses." While Victoria kept Werner engaged, using negotiation techniques Ethan taught her, Ethan slipped through the shadows, locating Sophie in a back office with one guard. "Dad?" she whispered when he appeared at the door. "True," he cautioned, dispatching the guard with silent efficiency. "Victoria's here too, we're going home." The confrontation escalated when Werner realized Victoria's transfer contained a tracking protocol. He raised his weapon, but Victoria didn't flinch. "You won't shoot me," she said with absolute certainty. "Why not?" Werner snarled. "Because I'm not what you really want. Revenge doesn't pay your debts." As Werner hesitated, Ethan secured Sophie safely outside. He signaled Victoria through their earpiece, package secured. Victoria's posture changed subtly. "It's over, Julian." Order lunged for her, but Victoria sidestepped with precision Ethan taught her, using Werner's momentum against him. As Werner stumbled, security forces stormed in. Outside, Sophie ran to her father, then surprisingly extended her arms to Victoria too. The three embraced, a tableau of unlikely connection. Later, after Sophie slept safely at home, Victoria faced Ethan in their living room. "You risked everything," he said quietly. "Why?" Victoria's composure finally broke. "Because for the first time in my life, something matters more than success or control." Her voice wavered. "You and Sophie, you've become my family. I couldn't bear to lose that." Ethan took her hand. "When Rebecca died, I thought I'd never feel whole again. I built walls to protect Sophie and myself. And now, Now I realize those same walls were keeping us isolated. He met her eyes. I don't want to be protected anymore. Neither does Sophie. Victoria leaned forward. Vulnerability and strength balanced perfectly. Neither do I. 6 months later, Montgomery Tech headquarters buzzed with activity. The company had transformed its security division into an industry-leading crisis response unit under Ethan's direction. Their approach, combining Victoria's business acumen with Ethan's strategic expertise, had revolutionized corporate security protocols across Silicon Valley. In the boardroom, Victoria addressed international investors. Montgomery Tech isn't just changing technology, we're changing lives. She gestured to the presentation screen, showing the company's new foundation, the Second Chance Initiative, providing career retraining for veterans and single parents. The program had already placed 50 former military personnel in cybersecurity positions, leveraging skills that might otherwise have gone unutilized. Ethan's connections to the veteran community had opened doors Victoria's money alone couldn't access. Afterward, board member Lawrence Palmer approached Victoria. "Remarkable turnaround this year. The Riley influence, I presume. Ethan helped me see untapped potential in the company and myself." Speaking of Riley, Palmer continued, lowering his voice, "Rumors are circulating about your personal involvement." Victoria's expression cooled. "My personal life is not board business. It is when it affects shareholder perception. A CEO romantically involved with a former janitor? Special projects director," she corrected sharply. "With military credentials most of our security consultants couldn't match, and a strategic mind that's increased our crisis response division's profitability by 40%. Nevertheless, Victoria interrupted, "I've never asked this board for personal approval, and I won't start now. Judge my results, not my choices." She left Palmer stunned, finding Ethan waiting outside. He recognized her expression. "Board problems? Nothing I can't handle." She checked her watch. "We should hurry. Sophie's presentation starts in an hour." At Westbrook Elementary, they slipped into the science fair. Sophie stood confidently beside her project, Structural Integrity in Emergency Shelters, inspired by Ethan's military experience and Victoria's engineering knowledge. "My research shows that triangular supports distribute weight most efficiently," Sophie explained to the judges, her voice clear and assured. "I tested different configurations using these stress models." The principal announced the winners. First place, Sophie Riley. As Sophie accepted her trophy, she beamed at Victoria and Ethan. "My dad taught me that sometimes buildings fall down," she explained to the audience. "But with the right support, they can stand stronger than before." Victoria squeezed Ethan's hand, both recognizing the metaphor. Later, at Victoria's penthouse, now warmer with family photographs and Sophie's artwork, Ethan received an official letter. His military service record had been amended, acknowledging previously classified missions, approving long overdue commendations. "How?" he asked Victoria. "I may have spoken with some people at the Pentagon," she smiled. "Your daughter should know her father is a hero, officially." That evening, news broke of Montgomery Tech's Revolutionary Veterans Program, with Ethan named as director. His phone filled with messages from former comrades. Men and women who disappeared into civilian obscurity like him now offered pathways back to meaningful work. One text stood out, his former commanding officer. "Knew you'd find your way back, Riley. Different battlefield, same warrior." Victoria found Ethan on the balcony, staring at his phone. "Regrets?" she asked softly. "Gratitude," he corrected. "I spent years hiding who I was, thinking invisibility meant safety. And now," he turned to her, "now I understand that being seen, truly seen, by the right person is the greatest security of all." Victoria leaned against him. "The board questioned my judgment today, about us." "What did you tell them?" "That some investments can't be measured on quarterly reports." She looked up at him. "That some risks are worth taking." 1 year later, Sophie's 8th birthday party transformed Victoria's once sterile penthouse into a celebration of color and laughter. Children from Sophie's class explored in wonder, their excited voices echoing through spaces once filled only with the hum of electronics and the whisper of Victoria's solitary footsteps. Parents who once whispered about the unlikely couple now witnessed their genuine connection, surprise giving way to acceptance. In the kitchen, Victoria arranged candles on a homemade cake, her third attempt after 2 spectacular failures. Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind, watching her meticulous placement of each candle. "Not bad for a CEO who couldn't boil water a year ago," he murmured against her ear. She leaned back against him. "I had a good teacher." "Sophie?" "Of course, Sophie. You still burn toast." Victoria's laughter, uninhibited, genuine, was a sound she'd rediscovered in this unlikely family. Their easy intimacy carried into the living room where Sophie opened presents with her friends. The pile of gifts testified to the connections they'd formed, not just with each other, but with a community that had gradually embraced them. When she reached Victoria's gift, she gasped. Adoption papers, carefully framed alongside a photo of the 3 of them from a camping trip months earlier. "So you can be my official mom," Sophie explained to curious friends, her matter-of-fact tone belying the months of legal work Victoria had navigated. But she already was anyway. Later, after guests departed, the 3 sat on the balcony watching the sunset paint the city skyline in gold and crimson. Sophie nestled between them, half asleep despite her protests that she wasn't tired. "I never thought I'd have this again," Ethan said quietly, his voice barely audible above the distant city sounds. Victoria touched the simple engagement ring on her finger, not the ostentatious diamond her board would have expected, but a band Ethan had designed himself, incorporating metal from his military tags and a small stone from Rebecca's original ring, with Sophie's blessing. "I never thought I'd have it at all." Sophie stirred. "Tell the story again, about how you met." Victoria smiled. "Which version? The official one or the true one?" "The true one, where Dad was a superhero in disguise." Ethan chuckled. "I wasn't a superhero, honey. You saved Victoria from the bad guys. And then," Victoria continued, "your dad and you saved me from something much worse." Sophie yawned. "What?" "Believing that success meant being alone, that power meant not needing anyone." Victoria brushed Sophie's hair gently. "You taught me that real strength comes from connection, not isolation." As Sophie drifted to sleep, Victoria and Ethan shared a look of profound understanding. They'd both been transformed. He from the invisible man to someone who stood proudly in his truth. She from the untouchable CEO to someone who embraced vulnerability as courage. In the fading light, their makeshift family represented something neither could have imagined a year earlier. A second chance neither believed they deserved. The path hadn't been smooth. Merging their worlds had challenged them both. Ethan sometimes still woke from nightmares of his military past. Victoria occasionally retreated behind emotional walls when stress mounted. But they'd learned to navigate these moments together, stronger for their shared understanding. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Ethan whispered to his sleeping daughter. Victoria took his hand, completing their circle. "Happy new beginning to us all." Below them, the city continued its relentless pace. But here, in this moment, 3 once broken lives had found wholeness together, proving that sometimes being saved is just the beginning of the story.